What fearlessness is to me is not about jumping out of a plane, it's about jumping into life. It's about being willing to move from your wheel of fear and wheel of freedom, even if you do it clumsily, even if you do it bad.
This is A Joyful Rebellion, the podcast that explores that moment you realize the life and success you worked so hard to create didn't come with all the fulfillment you thought it would. I'm your host, James Walters, and I want you to be the author of your own story. Each week, I connect with people who inspire bold answers to the question, what do I do now to create a life I love? If you're ready to start answering that question for yourself, you're in the right place. So let's start a joyful rebellion. Some stories shake you, others crack you wide open. Rhonda Britten's story does both, and then builds something extraordinary in its place. Rhonda is an Emmy Award winner, an author, and founder of the Fearless Living Institute. But before she helped thousands of people overcome fear, perfectionism, and self-doubt, she had to survive something unimaginable. And no spoilers from me, but I will say brace yourself. For Rhonda, what followed that event was decades of shame, addiction, and the belief she wasn't allowed to be happy. Until one moment of clarity started her path to healing. In this episode, we talk about the difference between knowledge and transformation, why trying harder often misses the point, and how fear disguises itself in everyday habits like perfectionism, people-pleasing, and procrastination. Rhonda shares how she helps people identify their unique wheel of fear, create a wheel of freedom, and finally feel what it means to be truly alive. Whether you're stuck in a cycle you can't quite name, or ready to make a change that actually sticks, this episode is a masterclass in reclaiming your story and walking through fear, not around it. Rhonda Britten, thank you so much for being here on this Joyful Rebellion today.
I love the name Joyful Rebellion because most of us think rebellion, anger, rage, like I'm breaking free. But I love that you inserted the word joyful rebellion. Just makes me so happy.
It makes it positive because the whole show is about that time in people's lives where they realize they need a change. They need to pick up the pen when it comes to writing the story of the rest of their life. Yeah. Whereas maybe other people have held the pen in the past. Maybe that's a job, or maybe that was a life situation like a relationship. And they have to figure out, okay, what's next? What am I going to do next? And the thing that I love about this conversation we're going to have is we're talking about fear. And 10 times out of 10, there's a lot around fear that comes with a joyful rebellion. Now, I love to talk with people who have been through their own joyful rebellion and then take that information, take that experience, take those scars, and they now help other people through theirs. And that's exactly what you do because you have been on a lot of media outlets. You've got an Emmy. I want to know, where is it on a shelf? Is it on the...
So it's in my bathroom, James. And every year my coaches, I certify coaches, we have a retreat. And every year they give me like a gag award, right? So I have these hysterical gag awards. Okay. And so my Emmy is in the middle of my gag awards. So all my awards are in one place.
I love it. I love it. And then you can go in there, you can see it, you can reflect. But you've been helping people for over 25 years.
30 years this year.
30 years. Whoa. Okay. Yeah. So you help people just be a much better version of themselves, get past their blocks. And I want to talk just so briefly about what happened 30 years ago that got you on this road, because you went through your own joyful rebellion. And then you came out on the other side and said to yourself, you know what, I've got to get this information to as many people as possible. And by gosh, you have so far.
Trust me, James, I did not want to do this.
Okay.
I did not want to do this, right? So I think some people go to their joyful rebellion willingly and some go kicking and screaming. And I came kicking and screaming because if I could set it up a little bit, I'm going to tell you about the worst day of my life, and then I'm going to bring you back to what happened 30 years ago because they're tied together.
Got it.
So the worst day of my life was when I was 14 years old, and I do believe that the worst days of our lives do contain the seed of our destiny. You don't know that on the worst day of your life, right? But when you can look back and reflect, you can be like, oh my God, if I look at it, that set me up for what I'm doing today or what I want to do today, right? So when I was 14, my parents were separated and it was Father's Day and my father was coming to take us out for Sunday brunch. And my two sisters are fighting it out in the bathroom, me and my mom in her bedroom, and she's putting on her blue eyeshadow and fluffing up her beehive hairdo. And my dad walks in the back, door, come on, let's go, because that's what dads do. And so me and my mom start walking out towards the car. My two sisters still fighting it out in the bathroom. And as me and my mom and dad walk out, my dad says he has to get his coat from the car. Now, I don't think you're old enough to remember leisure suit coats, but my dad was getting his Naugahyde leisure suit coat, and that was looking good back then, looking really good back then. And so he opens the trunk, and out of the corner of my eye, I notice he's not grabbing a coat, but he's grabbing a gun. And he starts yelling at my mother, "You made me do this, you made me do this," and he fires. And I start screaming, "Dad, what are you doing, Dad? What are you doing? Stop." And he looks at me, he blinks, I blink, he blinks. And my mother, with her last breath, screams out, "No, don't." And that bullet intended for me, my father shot my mother a second time. And that second bullet went through my mother's abdomen, out her back, landed in the car horn. And for the next 20 minutes, all I heard was, "Eh."
Oh, wow.
And then my father cocked the gun a third time, put the gun to his head and fired. So in a matter of 2 minutes, I was a sole witness of watching my father murder my mother and commit suicide in front of me. Now, I don't know how others would respond, but this is how I responded, James. That it was my fault because I was the only one physically out there that could have stopped it, right? I didn't grab the gun. I didn't kick my father in the shins, and I didn't jump in front of my mother. I just stood there going, "Stop, Dad, stop," right? And the amount of guilt and shame I had was overbearing. And I believed if you watch your mother die, you don't get to be happy again. So that's off the table. So I basically in that moment split into two, the outside Rhonda and the inside Rhonda. The outside Rhonda was fine. I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm good. I'm fine. No, good. I'm fine. And the inside Rhonda, who self-hatred, self-abuse, etc. And so that over the next 20 years, I basically started drinking, became an alcoholic, got 3 DUIs, and I tried to kill myself 3 times. And it was that third suicide attempt, James, that I realized something. I realized I'm not very good at killing myself, not good at it. And there has to be another way. And by the way, when you try to kill yourself 3 times, they do put you in a psychiatric ward for evaluation. They deemed me not crazy and let me go. And I remember sitting in my apartment, actually leaning against the wall of my little studio apartment. And you know how you lean against a wall when you're younger and you just fall on your butt, right? I remember doing that. And I said to myself, I have to start over because those 20 years that I was drinking, DUI, and suiciding, I also was going to therapy. I was going to workshops. I was a self-help junkie. I read every book, shaman work, you name it, I did it, right? Inner child work, did it. You name it, I did it. And I remember sitting there on the floor realizing I had a lot of tools and knowledge, but it didn't change my life because I didn't know how to apply it. And I think that's true for so many people. So I remember sitting on the floor and thinking, I've got to start over. And I thought, what do kindergartners do? Well, they get a calendar and gold stars. So I actually went to the store, got a calendar, got with gold stars. And every day for 30 days, I gave myself a gold star. By the way, I still have this calendar. It's in my office. And every day, anything I did good. And I'm talking about got angry and didn't break anything. That's, you know what I mean? I'm not talking about evolved stuff, right?
Right.
And at the end of 30 days, I had a calendar filled with gold stars. And doing that exercise gave me hope that I could change my life. And that was the beginning of what eventually became that exercise with the calendar and gold stars. I do now with my clients. I call it acknowledgments. You don't have to have a calendar with gold stars. Some clients do, by the way. But it becomes a way that you recognize yourself and you acknowledge yourself and you pat yourself on the back. When I started doing that for myself, I started seeing my life through a different lens and realizing that even though I'd done all this work, I hadn't changed my behavior. I hadn't changed the way I was thinking. Okay. I had read about a lot of stuff and gave me a lot of knowledge, like I said, but it didn't fundamentally change how I thought about myself. I still felt like I wasn't good enough. I felt like there was something wrong with me. I felt like I was broken. And it was only after that gold stars and then a couple other things that happened, which is why I'm here today, that was the beginning of my journey to have that insight, that aha moment, that miracle moment that put me on my path that I'm on today.
Wow, that is powerful. And it's like you said, that worst day had the seeds for what happened next. that darker period in your life where you were struggling with sobriety, where you were struggling with accepting yourself, you had to go through that.
100%. And I think about my clients today and that are people that are wanting to change. And I do think that the self-help industry in itself, or the personal development industry, whatever you want to call it, therapeutics, et cetera, I think that there is a lack of real understanding and compassion what it takes to truly change your life. I hear coaches all the time going, I have to get better clients, meet people more committed. And I'm like, no, they're scared and they don't know how to do it. And you giving them an assignment and lecturing them and telling them you have to try harder and get more discipline and you really have to do it. I remember I was coaching a coach. A company hired me to coach their coaches. And their top coach, client had, their assignment was to make 50 phone calls. Okay. And I listened to this call, as was my job. And at the end of the call, she said, well, now you have to do 100. Okay. Never once during that call did she actually address the reason why he didn't make those 50 calls. And I find that to be true in the coaching industry, and obviously some therapists too, and some people that are trying to help. They don't really understand what is really stopping somebody from really truly changing their life. They just think, well, why aren't you trying harder? And when fear has you, trying harder might actually be showing up for the phone call, and that is the bravest thing you did that day. And you didn't do any of the assignments. You didn't get anything done. But man, you're listening to us right now. Maybe you showed up for your coaching appointment. Maybe you took a class. You're taking notes. Maybe you're just thinking about it. For some people, that is incredibly brave. So I just think that most people that are trying to help people don't really understand what the topic of the day is, which is fear. They don't understand how that shows up in people's lives and how you address it so that you can truly help move somebody forward.
I definitely want to jump right into the topic of fear. And I always love to kind of get a baseline of what the words mean. And so a lot of people have their own definition of fear. And when you're working with clients, how do you help them understand what's fear different from maybe anxiety or nervousness or whatever might be holding them back, and they maybe label it fear? And you say, oh, no, that's just discomfort, or whatever you need to do to redirect.
Yeah. And again, don't have to agree with me, but in my world, you don't feel discomfort unless you're afraid.
Okay.
You don't feel anxiety unless you're afraid. So one of the very first things that I do when I speak to an audience of 1,000 or 100 is I start, just like you're saying, is like, well, what is fear? Because most people, and myself included, during those 20 years that I was drinking, suiciding, and, DUIing, I didn't think I was afraid. I didn't think I was afraid one bit. If you would have asked me, are you afraid? I would have looked at you like you were insane. Because I grew up in an environment, in a family, in a culture that fear was never. That was just nothing you thought of. So during those years, I never thought I was afraid. It was only after I got sober, only after I started having these other revelations that I realized it all came down to fear. But I didn't know that. And just to admit that it was fear took a level of humility for me. That was probably the biggest revelation and biggest humility moment I've had, because for somebody who doesn't have a relationship with fear and doesn't believe she's afraid, to finally admit that I was afraid, to finally admit that I had fear was, I think, the beginning of my true transformation. Because again, I don't think people understand that. So I give a little quiz. Speaking of how fear shows up, when I talk to that audience of 1,000 or 100 or teach a workshop, I actually have people take a little quiz, James.
All right.
Okay. Are you willing to take a little quiz?
Oh, sure. I'll do a quiz. I love quizzes.
Okay. All right. I'm going to read a list of words. And if you do any of these things or feel any of these things, I want you to nod your head. And you can shut your eyes so you don't notice that, you're on camera right now and everybody's watching you, right? If people who are listening to us or watching us, if you're safe to shut your eyes, please do. If you're driving, please don't. So I'm going to list words and you're going to nod your head if you do any of these things or feel any of these things, okay? So do you ever isolate? Do you ever pretend everything's okay when it's not? Do you ever hide out? Do you ever compare yourself? Do you ever secretly whine? Do you ever get judgmental? What about defensive? What about secretly manipulate? What about complain? What about wait and call it patience? Do you ever procrastinate? Worry? Feel like you're struggling? Blame? Do you ever deflect? Control? Do you ever feel bitter, powerless, dissatisfied? Ever feel resentful, entitled? What about guilty? What about disappointed? What about, are you a perfectionist or a people pleaser? Do you ever get irritated like now? What about ignored, overwhelmed, self-pity, annoyed? Ever feel like a victim? All right, go ahead and open your eyes there, James. What do you
I'm
think?
busy from nodding a lot.
Well, most people, when I go speak to an audience, most people have over 95%. Yeah. And I would dare say probably 98% have 100%. So this language that we use to describe our issues, oh, I'm a perfectionist, or I'm a people pleaser, oh, I'm just overwhelmed, I just am complaining, I'm comparing, right? We call those our problems. We say, God, I really don't want to be a people pleaser anymore. I got to put boundaries in place. I don't want to feel over. I got to change it, right? I got to get more balance. I'm not overwhelmed.
It's true.
So we see those as our problems. And really what those are what I call fear responses. Because you don't get overwhelmed unless you have a fear underneath. You don't complain unless you have a fear underneath. You don't judge unless you have a fear underneath. You don't feel bitter unless you have a fear underneath. So what we've been taught is to deal with the chairs on the Titanic, like just pay attention to the chairs and not actually pay attention to the big hole in the boat that's sinking us. So we run around, we get distracted and think that I have all these problems, because I know that's how I felt. I felt like I had all these problems. I'm a people pleaser. I get overwhelmed. I get anxious. I compare. I judge. And so when I used to see it through that lens, I had a lot of things wrong with me. I had a lot of things wrong with me. And then if I fixed one, something else would pop up, because what people don't understand is fear doesn't care how it stops you. So you quit procrastinating, fear doesn't care. It'll just show up as something else. It doesn't care what you do to distract yourself. It only cares to stop you, because it doesn't want you to live in a place, in a feeling, thought, or action that it can't guarantee your safety. And if you're having a new thought, a new feeling, you want to take a new action, it can't guarantee your safety. So it's going to distract you with all of these comparing, judging, et cetera, being disappointed. All of these are what I call, like I said, fear responses. So instead of labeling them problems or character defects or this is what's wrong with me, when we relabel them, reframe them as fear responses, what happens is we have a separation between us and them, and it puts you in observer, so that you can now detach in a certain way and look at it from a different lens. And what happens in that moment, this is the most beautiful thing that happens, is all the shame that you've carried because you've done these things and you haven't fixed these things and you should have changed these things and you're still doing these things, that shame melts away, because you realize it is not you doing these things. You're not lazy and stupid. It's fear giving you permission to do it, laying the groundwork for you to do it so it can keep you small, stuck, and safe, because it doesn't want to. Now, I do want to say one other thing. We're not afraid all the time, obviously. Let's say there's 9 areas to life. You might be fearless and what I call the wheel of freedom. You might be on your wheel of freedom 8 out of the 9 areas of your life. You're in the flow, you're grooving, you're like, yeah, I'm amazing, I'm amazing, I'm amazing. We're talking about the areas where you're not, where you're feeling like, why can't I get this part of my life together? I've got all these other places. Why can't I apply what I'm doing in those other areas to this life? Why can't I fix this? So if you've got 8 out of 9 areas grooving, awesome. That's yay. Yes. We're just talking about that one area or those 2 areas or those 3 areas that fear has you.
Yeah. And a lot of times, even if it is 1 or 2 areas, those are the ones that are right in front of you, right in front of your consciousness.
And that's right in your brain. And they're with you going to bed. They're with you going and waking up.
Oh, they're right there. And it sounds like fear has noble intentions.
Yes, it does.
It does. It wants to keep you safe. And that's the point of it. And this is a question I wrote down in your research, because way back when you started on this journey yourself, I read that you read tons and tons of self-help books, and now you write books for people. So clearly there were some things in those books that you read that maybe you didn't get. You got the information, like you said, but you didn't get that transformation. Now you write books where you help people get the transformation. You coach people, you coach coaches. So there's a big domino effect. But I had a question, and it just popped in my brain. Like in all of the research you've had to do, all of the people you've talked with, you've talked to different generations, clearly. And has fear shifted over time? I don't know if you follow on Instagram, the National Park Service.
Yeah.
They're hysterical.
They're hysterical. We love them.
But they keep having to remind people not to pet the bison.
Yes.
And people just think, oh, they're so fluffy and cute. And they, for some reason, evolution shut down the fear mechanism about bison. And people go up and get basically just trampled. Yep. And that's not a good thing. But it's a real question. Over time, we used to be afraid of saber-toothed tigers. We used to be afraid of like real dangers that kind of don't exist anymore. So Has fear morphed over time?
No, we've just gotten more sophisticated. So fear in and of itself is in our neurobiology. It's part of who we are. So it's always been. So it's the saber-toothed tigers or the buffalo or going to talk to your boss, because that's the other thing that most people don't recognize is that fear, there is emotional fear and physical fear. And most of us recognize the physical fears, right? I'm afraid of snakes. I'm afraid of bison, saber-toothed tigers. I'm afraid of those. Yeah. We can admit that. I'm afraid of heights. We can admit that all day long. What we don't see and don't understand is the emotional fears. So you and I can avoid heights and bison pretty much most days, right? We don't have to face those fears. We don't have to face the fears of heights and snakes and spiders. We don't have to do that. But what we do have to do is face our emotional fears, work with our emotional fears. And most people don't see emotional fears. Like I said earlier with the quiz, they don't translate in those to emotional fears. They just translate into weakness, or I'm lazy, or I'm stupid, or right? So they label themselves bad or wrong because they're having fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear of success. Instead of understanding, that's an emotional fear. And that emotional fear operates in our body and brain exactly like a physical fear. So the body and brain do not know the difference between an emotional and physical fear. So an emotional fear might give you that headache. It might give you that backache. It does exactly the same thing. So we might get anxious, like you talked about anxiety, right? We might get anxious from an emotional fear. Now, I have helped people, supported people when they've worked with me get off their anxiety medication. I'm not saying that I can do that. I'm not saying I'm a doctor. I'm not doing that. Stay on your anxiety medication. But once you start understanding how fear works, it's no longer a secret. Because that's the thing, when you said earlier about me reading books versus writing books, when I was reading those books, they would say beautiful things. I mean, I'd be inspired and I'd love them. And they'd be like, oh my God. And they'd say, love yourself more. And then I would be left with, how do you love yourself more? First of all, how do you love yourself? And too many authors are trite and they go take a bubble bath or, go ahead and take a nice walk in nature. And again, not that those aren't important, but how loving yourself is a much deeper journey than taking a bath and taking a walk, right? So I really am devoted to the how. How do you actually move through fear in a powerful, positive way that empowers you and moves you from what I call the wheel of fear to the wheel of freedom? I'm a big how person. I'm a big practical application person. I guess that's what makes me different. I'm not necessarily interested in just inspiring you. Yes, I want to inspire you, but I don't want to just inspire you. I want you to actually know what to do. I want you to know A, B, C, D, E, F, G. I want you to know 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And for people that have been working on themselves, they can skip 1 through 10. They've already done those. Go to 11. But just having an understanding that fear is a mechanism. It is a system that is built into our neurobiology. It is not because you're weak or stupid. It is literally here to keep you alive. And fear has a trigger mechanism, a different threshold for different people based on what I call their core fear is, what their core trigger is. And so once you have a name for it, like my core trigger, my core fear above, like down in the depth of the roots, right? And like digging through the dirt, like what is underneath it is I am above all, which by the way, when I discovered this was shocking to me, was that I am afraid to be seen or thought of as a loser. So what did I do most of my life? Well, I was obviously drinking and doing all those things, but I was also being the class president. I was also bragging. I was also doing the things to prove to you I was a winner. So a lot of coaches and self-help authors go, do the opposite. If you're afraid to be a loser, be a winner. No, that's still fear. No, don't do that. No.
It's driven by fear. Yeah.
That's not going to work long term. Don't do the opposite. Fear is not just acting you look better in fear because you're still in fear. So we want to start shifting that way of being. So again, mine is loser. So if I compare, or if I'm a perfectionist, or I people please, or I do any of those things that I read out loud to you for that quiz, if I do any of them, I now, Rhonda Britten, know that there is some moment that occurred where I felt threatened, and I felt, for me, the word is loser. I felt less than, I felt like a loser. Now, a lot of people say to me, well, Rhonda, I don't feel good enough. My fear is not good enough. And my view on the words not good enough, I'm afraid of being not good enough, that's the generic version. All of us are afraid we're not good enough. But once you identify it from a personal place, like loser for me, yours might be selfish. I don't know what yours is, right? Like yours could be selfish, yours could be lazy, but mine's loser. Once you identify it personally, what happens is, I've heard this from so many clients, it's like they look back on their life, they're having that life review, and go, oh my God, now I know why I didn't do this, didn't do this, why I took that job, why I didn't take that job, why I got married, why I got divorced, why I didn't get married. It's like you see it through the lens of your wheel of fear, i.e. for me, loser. And I can see my whole life in clear 4D color on why I did what I did and why I didn't do what I didn't do.
Wow, there's so much there, because if someone were to ask me in all of these conversations that I've had with people on this podcast, what's the thread that runs through them, but also, is there a magic bullet to life? And I would say the closest thing I could imagine a magic bullet with personal growth comes down to awareness.
Yes.
It doesn't come up overtly in every conversation, but it's right under the surface. And just like you said, when you became aware that you were driven by fear, you rejected the thought, because you said, how is that even possible? But it got you thinking. And then that was maybe one of the first dominoes that fell and got all the other ones going. So it is about awareness. And when you help clients come to that awareness that, no, you're not lazy, you're afraid, or drilling down into finding that word, like for you is loser, what does the process look like to, because they wouldn't reach out to you if they weren't already aware on some level, right?
Well, people come to me for lots of different reasons. People come to me because they're at a ceiling with their money. People come to me because their marriage is in distress, right? People come to me, like I think of one guy who came to me because his marriage was about to fall apart. And he had done, like, there's a lot of people that are doing self-help, personal development, going to therapy, but they haven't unlocked something and they're still searching. Right? There's something they're still searching for. They know that they do not have the answer that is satisfying them about why they're the way they are. They've gotten a lot of answers from different books and different people, but it hasn't satisfied them. They haven't gotten, yes. And so when this gentleman came to me, his wife was about to leave him, everything was hitting the fan. When he was able to see his wheel of fear and his wheel of freedom, again, he could see what happened between him and his wife with new eyes. He could see what kind of father he was being. He could see what kind of employee he was being. He could see it all. And when you become aware of these things, you not only become aware of your wheel of fear, you become aware of your wheel of freedom. And the wheel of freedom is the antidote to the wheel of fear, right? So it's the thing that you must practice on a regular basis in order to set yourself free from that wheel of fear more and more and more. So I'll tell you what mine is, so it's clear. My wheel of freedom, and what I call the essential nature, mine is authentic. Now, when I was 12 years old, I was writing E.E. Cummings poems, like that famous quote of his, like, being yourself in this world is the hardest journey you'll ever take, but keep taking it, whatever that quote is, right? And I would write that in longhand, when I was 12, because I wanted to be authentic more than anything else. The first self-help book I read when I was 12 was Why Am I Afraid to Tell You Who I Am? Because I could not be myself. So when I dug down, and I have exercises and ways for people to identify these things, whether it's through the book or through my class, Fearless Living Transformation Program, or working with a coach, when that happens, when I got authentic, it was the thing I'd always wanted to be. The thing that I, Rhonda Britten, always yearned for. But if you are secretly afraid, and again, you don't know this until you know your wheel of fear, you don't know this is what's operating. If you actually secretly think you're a loser, being authentic is not a great idea. Right? Because then people are going to know you're a loser.
Right.
So every part of my being, that part of myself in the wheel of freedom, and who I admired, who I respected, they were authentic. They were fully themselves. And I was like, wow, how do you do that? Right? But it's the very thing that I could not be.
Wow.
Because if fear was in charge, I could not be that thing that I wanted to be. So when you talk about awareness, I'm so glad you brought that up, because it is awareness. Awareness is the key. And I'm going to go back to what I talked about with coaches earlier and therapists. When somebody is willing to trust you, whether it's reading the book or, like I said, going through the class or working with the coach, willing to trust you to help them through this process to discover their will of fear and will of freedom, that is the most honoring moment of my life. The fact that they are willing to trust me, right? My course, again, whatever they trust my words, trust my work. That is the most honoring to me. Like, who am I, right? Remember, I'm the DUI and suicidal alcoholic, right? So the level of compassion and understanding and empathy while you're taking somebody through this journey is critical. Right? It's not about like, okay, let's do the exercises, let's get to it.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, in order for them to be willing to open up, to help you and them uncover their fear, their core fear, and their essential nature, it takes great courage. And that's why I say when people are moving through my program, I say that it is the biggest honor because it takes great courage. And it takes great courage to be aware. Because when you become aware, it is humbling. But also, even beyond humbling, it can bring up regret and pain and embarrassment because you're like, oh my God, I did that. Oh my God. And before, maybe you'd blame somebody for it, right? Well, they made me do it.
Yeah.
Well, when you become aware, it's nobody's fault. You know what I mean? Like, you can't look out, it's nobody else's fault. And so there's a level of personal responsibility that happens. And with that personal responsibility, many people have to move through the moments of regret and humiliation and being humble, and then move into forgiveness of themselves and their past. So they can take on that personal responsibility and that ownership and truly live the life your soul intended. So that's why going to a hard-ass somebody, again, some people love that, and I say, you do it. In one of my workshops, I had a man stand up, and he's like, well, I don't understand how this works. I'm like, yes, wait. So he takes the workshop, and at the end, I say, so what's possible for you? He goes, well, I now see anything's possible for me. And you basically punched me in the gut, and I begged for more. Right? Because the awareness is so... it can be so like, are you kidding me? And that's what's freeing. That awareness is so freeing.
That awareness, but also you mentioned, and I want to circle back to the regret, because it can be, some people have held on to one way of being for a very long time, and it's done a lot of things, maybe not for them.
And I want to kiss them, James. I want to kiss them. And I want to hold them, and I want to say, you can do it, because that was only them in survival mode. And if they can see themselves and go, that was all fear-based. That wasn't you. That wasn't you. You would never do that. You, the essence of who you are, your spirit, your soul, would never have cut yourself short. Fear did that to protect you. And because you couldn't see it, you couldn't stop it. So that level of understanding of the freedom that people are not doing this to themselves purposely. It's that they do need what you said, James, the awareness in order to understand. And then that flood of that shame just melts away. And all of a sudden there is room to forgive yourself. There is room to let the past go. Like when I forgave my parents, I have to say that was easy. Forgiving my father was the easiest. And he's the one that murdered my mother. My mother was harder to forgive because I had to take her off the pedestal and see her as a woman. And then forgiving myself. People say to me all the time, well, you're only 14. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You can tell me all day that I was 14. It doesn't matter. That doesn't change the responsibility I felt and the guilt I felt and the humiliation I felt and the self-hatred I felt. So don't tell me I was 14 and, oh, you didn't know. Don't tell me that. That doesn't help. I want you to understand that when I forgave myself, let's just put it that way, when I truly forgave myself, I remember walking away. I had a ceremony where I forgave my father, mother, and myself. And when I walked away, it was like hours. It was like 5 hours. And I talk about it in my book, Fearless Living. And when I completed that ceremony, I was sitting down and I stood up and I turned towards my car. I remember feeling, James, for the first time I was walking in my own shoes and I wasn't carrying my parents. I didn't even know that's what I was doing before that. I didn't know that I was trapped until I was free.
Yeah. How about that?
And I think that's true for many people. They don't even know they're trapped until they're free. Then they go, holy crap, I was trapped. But you don't even know it because it's what you're used to.
I use the analogy a lot of times of a fish doesn't know it's in water.
Doesn't know.
It doesn't know. And to rewind for a second, we're all born with fear hardwired in us. So that's the nature bit. Then we go right into the nurture, and that gives us our triggers for the fear pretty early on in life, it sounds like.
Well, by the time you're 7, but also research shows now that, as we know, the brain doesn't know the difference between real or imagined. And sure, we have influenced by the culture, who we're raised by, et cetera, et cetera. But also, research is now discovering that we maybe handed down our fears through our DNA.
Okay.
So your grandfather or your great-great-grandmother might have had a fear. They lived in a depression, and you have no situation in your life to explain why your fear is what it is. And a lot of people search for that why, right? They're like, if they can just figure out the moment, if they can just figure out the why, then they think everything will unlock magically and everything will be fine, right? That's not how this works. Because you don't just have one event. You have lots of events, and they all build on one another. It's like, building a house. It's brick upon brick upon brick upon brick. Now they're showing that fears can hand it down through our DNA. So what your core fear is may have nothing to do with your actual life.
That's a bummer.
Well, but it's also freeing. So instead of, I always tell my clients, you don't have to search for why you're like this. You don't have to find the story. Because what I noticed through my 30 years of coaching people and supporting people is if you need to heal something, trust me, it'll come up to be healed if you need to. So if you've had childhood abuse or maybe been raped, et cetera, and you're wanting to be intimate in a relationship, trust me, that's probably going to come up to get healed because it's present. So you don't have to go looking for it. It will pop right up and go, oh, remember this? And it's like, crap, But then you have the desire to heal it because you have the desire now to be intimate, right? You have the desire. So it's coming up at the time that is the perfect time for you to have the courage to face it because now you want something. So when it comes up, that wanting helps you move through it.
That's really important to talk about. And I wanted to go back to the age thing.
Yeah.
In your experience, in your practice, and in all the people you've talked to, when someone does come to this awareness about their fears, about their triggers, what it is for them, and everyone's really different and everyone has different things to move through. But have you seen anything in common with people who come to this work, let's say in their 20s versus 30s versus 40s and beyond?
I will tell you. And I once taught the Fearless Living Weekend to teenagers. So when I do my live workshop, I put about an hour and a half, and I put people in groups of 4 or 5, 3, 4, 5 people, and there's a coach to help them. And it takes like an hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours to go through everybody to get their wheel of fear. And then the same thing, another hour and a half, 2 hours the next day for your wheel of freedom. So I scheduled that same amount of time for these teenagers. Okay, the teenagers got it in like 15 minutes. You know why? Because they don't care about lying. They haven't built up a story about themselves. So in their teens and 20s, they're more available. It's on the surface more. They haven't piled on story and evidence for decades and decades and decades, right? Yeah. So I find that when you're younger, and I'm not saying all younger people, but when you're younger, you're more apt to find it quicker because you're more available to the truth. As you get older, again, unless you're willing, and of course, people that come to my workshops and read my book, they're willing because they're coming for it, right? But unless you're willing, your identity that you've created out of your wheel of fear is so strong, that it will not let you find it. Because the wheel of fear knows everything you know. As smart as you are, educated as you are, spiritual as you are, and knowledgeable as you are. So it uses everything against you. I remember I was teaching in London, and this was right when my book, Fearless Living, came out. And I think I had 3 coaches in London at the time. So there's 120 people, and there's only 4 of us. So I'm running around trying to help people get their wheels. And I go to one group. It's coming to the close time, and pretty much everybody has their wheels. And I go to this one group in the corner, and I go, "How you guys doing?" And they had maybe 5 people in the group. And they looked at me and said, "Well, we're still on number 1." And I went, "Really? Okay." And I looked at the woman who was number 1 and asked her a couple questions and said, "Oh, your trigger is ordinary. Okay, next. Because ordinary triggers do certain behaviors.
Okay.
And ordinary triggers don't want to be like anybody else. So they constantly are, no, that doesn't work for me. That doesn't, no, that doesn't work for me. That doesn't, the woman was basically saying for every question everybody asked, they're like, oh yeah, no, not me. No, not me. Right. So ordinary triggers do certain behaviors. They have certain ways of thinking. I can get people's wills obviously pretty fast. Yeah. So I was able to go through all those people pretty quickly. But again, the younger you are, the more open you are because you don't have a built identity for the last 40 years.
Yeah. Wow, that's good news. And also for people who have put this work off and didn't realize it was...
But I'm going to love you, James. I'm going to love you through it. It's okay.
It's going to be good.
Right?
It's going to
be more than good. You're going to feel this surge of energy and this passion move through you that you probably haven't felt for decades.
It sounds like exciting work. It sounds a little terrifying because you do have to face yourself. And you're right. Yourself knows all the tricks that you've been putting on, all the little dances that you do.
That's right.
Is there anyone that you have met, anyone that you could describe who's maybe the most fearless?
I talk to fearless people every day because what fearlessness is to me is not about jumping out of a plane. It's about jumping into life. It's about being willing to move from your wheel of fear and wheel of freedom, even if you do it clumsily, even if you do it bad, even if you can't even get words out. It doesn't matter. So that's the most fearless people I know, right? I'll give you an example. I was doing a book signing in Atlanta, and this guy came. He's like 6'4", big giant guy. And he comes in and he goes, I came here to tell you I'm fearless. And I'm thinking, okay, this big giant guy is coming to tell me he's fearless. He's driven all this way to come and tell me he's fearless. And I said, oh, you're amazing. Congratulations. Woo, yeah. I go, can I give you a little quiz? And he's like, sure. And I said, well, can you say I love you? Can you say I forgive you? Can you ask for forgiveness? Do you say you're sorry? And with everyone, he was like, rant, right? Because people when they hear fearless, they just hear physical fear. They don't understand it's really emotional fear. So people that I see every day, people that show up in my classes, people that show up, use me as a coach or use one of my coaches, just showing up for a call to me is a fearless act. To me, that's fearless. That is a fearless act because you're saying, I want something different and I don't know how to get it myself.
That's the biggest issue I've had with a lot of self-help books. I went through a journey of happiness many years ago, and there are no shortage of books on happiness.
Yeah.
And a lot of them, when you read them, they say a lot of the same things. They say, you'll be happy when you decide to be happy. I mean, that's what I distilled it down to after probably a dozen or so, and just had to, again, look at myself and say, okay, when am I going to decide this? Instead of reading the next book. So to hear that small acts are considered fearless, that's really encouraging, because if someone's listening right now and they're like, okay, just get to the next step. But also what you said is really important, because when it comes to self-help, like we talked about before, a book can be helpful. It can get you in the door. It can raise your curiosity. But until someone really talks to another person who's either been there or another person who knows how to get them moved from where they are to where they want to be, it's maybe going to have limited effects, right? Is that your experience, where a lot of people come to you and they say, oh, I've read all these books, I've looked at every YouTube, I've seen every TED Talk, and in 30 minutes talking with you, I had this figured out, and now I know where to go now?
Yeah. I mean, one woman was at a workshop, a 3-day workshop, and afterwards she came over to me and said, I have gotten more in 3 days than I've done in 20 years of therapy. She goes, I should have paid you. And I'm like, well, fine, write a check if you'd like. I mean, feel free. So I've had many people say to me that this has dramatically changed their life. And what I tell people is all the work you've done on yourself is good work. What fearless living does is it actually gives you a foundation so you can actually utilize that work. So it tells you to love yourself, but you don't know how. Well, once you understand the wheel of freedom, you're actually going to give yourself permission to love yourself. So that's what the wheel of fear and wheel of freedom do. It gives you permission to actually live the life your soul intended. I have coaches at a retreat every year. And last year I had a wheels workshop. So we went through all the wheels as a group to advance my coaches to know the wheels even better. And I asked everybody, why did you come to Fearless Living? What was the reason you came? One woman looked at me, she goes, it was my last hope.
Wow.
And if you met this woman, She is accomplished. She's successful. She owns her own business. She's married. She, on the outside, has an amazing life. But to her, she was at the tail end, the wit's end of, I do not know how to get beyond what I need to get beyond. I have done all these things. Why can I not get beyond it? Yeah. And that's really where I was. Why can't I figure this out? Which brings me to the moment when, that brought me here. It's like, that's where I was. I was like, how do you get beyond, if you've read every book and gone to therapy and you've taken the workshops and you've worked with people and there was no coaches when I started, you've done everything you think you can do and you still think you're not measuring up, right? You're still not good enough. Well, what do you do then?
Yeah.
Well, once you understand fear, all of that conversation goes away.
I'm seeing how this kind of builds on itself when a person starts this work. Is there a period where they've had the awareness and then they can identify what the fear is? They've got that word. Is there a period of time where they're still doing the work where it's not fearless, it's not the absence of fear, it's walking with the fear, kind of dancing with the fear and calling it out when they notice it? And
to me, that is fearless.
Okay. So
the Buddhists use the word fearless. Like a lot of, I'm trying to remember the name of this woman, I'm blanking on it right now, the woman who had the near-death experience, and she wrote a book, Something Dying, and I'm forgetting it. And in her near-death experience, she was riddled with cancer and she was in surgery. And they were trying to basically see how bad it was. And literally she was riddled with it. So they didn't do anything. They literally just sewed her back up. Well, she died on the table. And then obviously came back. She had a near death. And she came back. And by the way, within weeks, she was completely cured.
Whoa.
Completely cured. No strain of cancer. She's alive today. Has written many books. And what spirit, God, source, whatever you want to call it, said to her is, be fearless. Be fearless. So I don't think it's fear -less. For me personally, because I've had many people say that to me, like, oh, well, you're telling people to not have fear. It's like, oh, no, sweetheart. Fearless is actually, you're actually shimmering your boots, but you're not afraid because you don't know, because you know what's happening. You know what's happening. That's the difference. You know what's happening inside you. There's no like, why is this happening to me? No, you understand it. So then when you're taking a risk, what I call stretch, risk, or die, which is the gift I'm going to give to everyone listening, stretch, risk, die, when you're about to take a stretch, risk, or die, you understand what's happening. So you don't have to freeze or doubt yourself or sit there and beat yourself up about it. You're still going to be shaking in your boots until you practice, right? Until you change those neural pathways in your brain. And that happens with repetition. There's no confusion anymore. And there's no beating yourself up. In the world of fearless living, you cannot beat yourself up. That is like, no. Because beating yourself up is literally the gas to the wheel. Oh. You beat yourself up, you've just fueled that wheel again. So in the world of fearless living, that's one thing I take away from you is like, can't do that anymore. Okay. So you're shaking in your boots and you're taking this action. Well, broken it down, you know what to do because you know how to do it on your wheel of freedom, which is where you're going, which you're practicing. You know how your wheel of fear talks to you. You already know, everybody knows what their wheel of fear says. It's not like a secret. That's not a secret. Yeah. So when that familiar voice comes up, instead of believing it, you go, oh, that's my wheel of fear. Ha, I see you, wheel of fear. No, I'm going to act on my wheel of freedom. And wheel of fear is like, no, don't do it. And you're like, I see you. But this is what's really cool, James. The more and more you live on your wheel of freedom, less fear has power over you. And the more it doesn't try to stop you in taking those stretch, risk, and dies, because think of fear as a great grandma, right? They're just like trying to keep you safe. Well, you can prove to your great grandma that you can go ahead and have that conversation. Great grandma's like, okay, well, if you screw it up, then it's on you, right? But you've kind of proven to yourself and to grandma that you got it. Yeah. Right? Well, when you start having these moments, the wheel of fear goes, all right, she's safe. She's safe now. Okay, I guess she can do it. All right. So fear, like for me, fear, it doesn't visit me very often, but you want fear to visit you because if it's not visiting you on occasion, you're not taking what I call stretch, risk, or die. And in order to keep growing, in order to keep building your comfort zone bigger and bigger and bigger, because you want to be comfortable anywhere with anyone at any time, you got to take those stretch, risk, and dies. So it's not about at home and eating Doritos when you got your wheel of fear and wheel of freedom, right? It's about walking across the street, going to the gym. It's about asking that girl out. It's about, getting that new job. It's about A, B, or C, right? So when you do that, you start building up a repertoire of belief in yourself. You start believing more in the wheel of freedom than the wheel of fear.
That's huge. You started with the quiz. You came up with a lot of words that I could identify with. And I'm sure people listening right now or watching us, they're like, oh, I didn't really realize that was associated with fear. For example, complaining. And I saw on your website, people who complain a lot, it comes from a place of fear. What is it about complaining that comes from a place of fear? So if you've got someone who wants to bend your ear every time you see them and tell you about all the things happening in their neighborhood HOA, what's happening there?
I'll say two things. One is we all want to be heard and seen, and we all want connection and belonging. So the number one human need is connection and belonging, and that's been researched to death. So I want to connect and I want to belong. Even if you're an introvert, even if you're highly sensitive, whatever you want to say, we still have a need to connect and belong to whatever that is. So that person complaining, and I'm going to give a quick definition of complaining versus venting.
Okay.
Venting is I am aware of what's happening and I need to get all my feelings out to diffuse this energy because feelings are energy. So I need to diffuse this energy. So I'm going to get my journal out or I'm going to call my best friend and I'm going to say I need to vent and hopefully she has time. And I'm going to say, I need to vent. Do you have 10 minutes? The difference is I'm taking full responsibility.
Okay.
Right? I am saying I need to vent. I need to get this off my chest. I need a safe place to do it. And oh, by the way, I need 10 minutes. And I let it go. I say whatever I need to say. That jerk, that I can't believe it. And then when I'm done, two things either happen. One is I have diffused enough where I'm actually open to find a solution. Or I'm not diffused enough and I just need to move on, right? So my friend goes, so are you complete? Yes, I am. Thank you. And we change subjects. Like we literally change subjects. So venting is I'm committed to solving a problem, but I got a lot of energy moving through me. So I need to diffuse that so that I have a clear mind. So I'm clear so that I can find a solution. Complaining is there's no personal sense of responsibility and there is no looking for a solution, right? All about I need to be heard. I need to be seen again, because they want to connect. I mean, that's natural. And they don't have other skills to get that need met. So a lot of people don't have skills to get their needs met beyond the ones the wheel of fear presents. So complaining is a fear response, and it's because that person doesn't have another skill set. And they also don't understand what's happening. They don't understand that they're being hijacked. They don't understand that they're not looking for a solution. So what I differentiate from my coaches and my students is when you're complaining, you're not committed to a solution, you're committed to the problem.
Oh, yes.
Right? In venting, I'm committed to finding a solution and I'm taking full responsibility for my feelings. I'm taking full responsibility of what my part is, right? Complaining is, it's not my fault. It's their fault. And I need to complain about it. I'm not interested in a solution. So when people bend your ear and they complain, you have to be on your wheel of freedom to be this brave. And the first time you do it, you're going to be shaken and you're going to be like, I can't say that, Rhonda. And you're going to be able to say it soon enough. But say, Sally, I really hear you. I hear that you're really frustrated. And I'm wondering, are you wanting to find a solution or do you just want me to listen? Now, the first time you say that to a good friend, they're like, what's wrong with you, right? But the thing is, what you're doing is you're actually making them responsible for what they need from you. That you now show up as another human being instead of just somebody that has no purpose except to listen, right? What do you need from me? Do you need to just get everything out or do you want to figure out a solution?
Yeah.
Well, let's say they say, well, I just need to get it out. Okay. All right. So, but again, the next time, it's the third, fifth time. Now, I will say one caveat. If somebody just got divorced or there's been a death, they're going to probably need to vent for more than 5 times, right? Complain, quote unquote. But what you can do is you can shift it into venting by your questioning, right? So if that person is now, it's a complaint, it's not a death, it's not a, it's just the next door neighbor, right? Go, oh, heard you a few times now. I keep asking you if you want to find a solution or if you just need to vent. And every time it seems like you just need to vent. So I actually want to help you find a solution. So when you're ready to do that, and then they're going to think you're a horrible person and you're not being a horrible person. You're actually just telling the truth.
Yeah.
When I got divorced, I vented for a year and a half and I wasn't even aware of it. And a good friend of mine dropped me off at home after a luncheon and she looked at me. She goes, and God love her. She said, nobody wants to hear about your divorce anymore. Then I went, what? What are you talking about? Right? I didn't even know that I was doing that.
Oh, wow.
And that's the thing. When people are complaining, they're not even knowing they're doing it. They're unconscious.
Yeah.
They're not aware. They're just spewing. I didn't know I was doing that. And I'm looking at her like, she goes, yeah, you've been talking about your divorce for a year and a half. And I never, ever, ever talked about it again.
Wow.
Right? Because she brought it to my awareness.
Yes. On the flip side, what you were saying, if you're working in your wheel of freedom and you have the courage to say, are you looking for a solution or are you looking to vent? Well, that helps you avoid one of the other words in your quiz, which is resentment. And so resentment, it sounds like, comes from a fear of stepping up and communicating clearly. Some people would call it maybe boundaries or something like that. And if you can get to the level where you can communicate in that way, you skip the whole need for resentment, because
that's right.
Now you're working together with the person.
Because you're having sovereignty.
Yeah.
You're having agency.
Exactly.
Right? A lot of our pain and suffering is because we don't have sovereignty and agency. And we're wondering why these people are hurting us, why this is happening to us. And that is heartbreaking when we're sitting there in the muck and mire of, why is this happening to me?
Yeah.
Why can I not get beyond this? Why are they treating me so poorly? Why? Again, going back to that why. Do people hurt people? Yes. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. And you are responsible for your own sovereignty and your own agency. And one of the things that I learned from one of my brilliant trauma therapists, I remember we were talking and I was talking about my boyfriend at the time or something, right? And she goes, Rhonda, touch your shoulder. Okay, I touch my shoulder. Okay. She goes, that's where you end. And I was like, what? It was like, what are you talking about? She goes, this is where you end. He is not here. This is you. He is over there. And that was so mind-blowing to me and shocking. And I had been doing fearless living for a while when I went to this trauma therapist. And when she said that to me, it was like, ding, ding, what?
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that most of us are not taught, because our parents, many of our parents, whether they don't care about it or they treat us like crapola or they love us, they don't build our own sovereignty, right? They don't build sovereignty. They don't give you your agency. They're either hovering parents or they're absent parents, but that's the same. They don't give you your sovereignty. They don't teach you how to have sovereignty. So sovereignty, agency is really a misunderstood term. People think it's about independence, which it is in one way. But agency and sovereignty really are about, you are responsible from shoulder to shoulder, from top of your head to the bottom of your feet. This is what you're responsible for. You're not responsible for your boyfriend's failed relationship with his child. Or you're not responsible for your boss losing money. You're not responsible for your mother's complaining about her best friend. You're not responsible for that. And when you quit taking responsibility for those things, a new relationship forms. A new relationship can happen. Now, the other person may not like that. I think the number one reason people don't go to personal development, I hear this all the time, is I'm going to become somebody different and my husband's going to leave me. Or my friends are going to not like this. They don't want me to change. I can't change because, again, I belong to this group. Connect and belong. I belong to this family. I belong to this group. I belong to this church. I belong to this organization. And if they come to fearless living and get fearless, they're afraid they're going to get dumped. But what happens is they may be the instigator of a new level of awareness in that group. And what else happens, I know this was true for me before I found fearless living, is I thought the same thing. And I thought, if I change, there's going to be nobody to be friends with. I really believed that. And now, as I've gotten healthier and healthier, you know what, James, I did not know this, but there's a lot of healthy people out there. And you know what? Healthy people actually have no problem inviting you in. Yeah. Healthier people are very inclusive. And they're like, come on over here. Yeah. And by the way, they usually make more money and they're more loving. So if you're afraid of losing the connection you have to the people you have, one, I help clients navigate that. I call it Fear Junkies and Fear Busters, and I teach you how to work with Fear Junkies and Fear Busters.
Okay.
And so so you can keep those relationships. So you don't have to leave those relationships. Yeah. You just have to be with them differently. And then the other thing is you're going to develop new relationship with new people. You're going to have more than this group. So yeah, there are people that are really concerned about being left behind.
That's fascinating. And it's so wild because the description that you gave of the concept of agency and sovereignty is exactly what I am trying to say when every single week on this podcast, I say that I want people to be the author of their own story. And people say, well, I thought you meant writing a book. And okay, sure. But everyone is the star of their own movie, right? And every movie starts with a script. And that script, you have to write it. And you write it a little bit day by day. And you can either let other people do it for you, or you can take the pen and you can start doing it a little bit more yourself. And everything that you are about teaching people is getting them there to grab that pen, start writing their own story. And that can be pretty uncomfortable sometimes. And Rhonda, I'm so excited that we had this conversation. It's been so insightful. And I want you to let everyone know who's listening right now or watching us how to get in touch with you, how to get your books and learn more about your coaching.
Go to fearlessliving.org. It was my website, and that has, you can go up to get coached. And if you want to take Fearless Living Transformation Program, that's where you're going to find your wheels through that course. Or you can get my book, Fearless Living. I got it right here. I read the quiz out of it, right? And I want to give everyone a free class, a free bonus gift, and go to fearlessliving.org/risk, R-I-S-K.
Okay.
Fearlessliving.org/risk, R-I-S-K. You're going to put your name and email in. And this class is all about how to take those stretch, risk, and dies in your life. It's 3 15-minute videos, for gosh sake. So you can do it, in an hour, right? Less than an hour. And the third video, I actually go through and describe the Wheel of Fear. So you're actually going to see me go through the Wheel of Fear and all 4 components of it. So you have a better view of that. So you're going to put your name and email in. You'll get access to the platform. You're going to get templates, worksheets, videos, everything you need. And like I said, it's going to take less than an hour. And I'm speaking to a group. This is a video of me teaching a group. And so you're also going to hear their questions. So you're going to be live in the group with me. So go ahead to fearlessliving.org/risk, R-I-S-K. And all my social medias are Rhonda Britten, RHONDA Britten.
Britten. So, all right.
Britten.
Good to know. Yes. And I'll have all of that info, all those links at the top of the show notes. So anyone who's listening on a podcast app right now, just scroll to the show notes and start hitting your thumb on whatever link works best for you. And Rhonda Britten, thank you so much for being here. I know I am probably in the next 10 minutes going to go to that link myself and check it all out. So thank you for all of your energy and for your information and for showing up the way you show up for people.
Thank you. And the last thing I want to say is there's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with you. Let that soak into everybody who's listening. There's nothing wrong with you. It's just fear.
Thanks so much for joining me today. And if you have an extra minute, I have a favor to ask. Some of you listen to this show on Apple Podcasts, and a lot of you I talk to are on Spotify or Amazon. I'd love it if you would take just a second to leave a rating or a review. It lets the platforms know that listeners are getting value from the show and suggest it to others who are interested in similar content. And as always, if you have a topic you'd like me to cover, a guest suggestion, or just general feedback, I'd love to hear about that too. Connect with me on Facebook, Instagram, or at ajoyfulrebellion.com.